A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad that you have joined the program today. On the program here in just a matter of moments, we're going to talk with Eric Delbert, Executive Officer at L.E.P.D, Firearms Range and Training in Columbus, Ohio. Unfortunately, Eric and those in the Second Amendment community in Columbus have gotten sort of a front row seat into the saga of Casey Goodson, the 23-year-old concealed carry holder who was shot and killed by a Franklin County deputy back on December the 4th, a little bit more than a week ago now. Still a lot of unanswered questions in the Casey Goodson shooting. And you've got wildly divergent stories, too. What law enforcement says is very, very different than what the family has alleged. And we don't have any body camera footage. There are no eyewitnesses to this shooting other than the officer involved. And we don't have an autopsy report that's been released. We've had, a few brief comments made by the coroner's office saying that Casey Goodson was shot in the torso, but we don't know if that's the front, the side, the back. Family says that Casey Goodson Jr. was shot in the back 3 times by Deputy Jason Mead. Jason Mead says no. Casey Goodson was shot when he refused to drop a gun that he had pointed at the deputy. And we've been covering this case for about a week and a half. I have been doing my utmost to try to be as fair as I can be and to try to not take sides. I can tell you my own personal opinion is that I'm really troubled by what happened here, and I am having a really hard time rectifying those two different stories. I don't know which one is right. I don't know if there's a blend of the truth that, the family are saying some things that are accurate, the law enforcement saying some things that are accurate, but both sides are also saying things that are not true. I don't know. What I do know is that this is a situation that a lot of gun owners are paying attention to, rightfully so. This is a situation that has garnered hundreds of protesters in Columbus this past weekend, thankfully all peaceful. And it is a topic of conversation for those in the Second Amendment community, not only in Columbus, Ohio, but across the country as we continue to look for answers. So, listen, I wish I could tell you that by the time I got done talking with Eric Delbert, that we had figured it all out. That's not the case, unfortunately. There are still these unanswered questions, and there is I cannot let go of this fact that we may never learn to our satisfaction what actually happened to Casey Goodson and why he died. We may never learn to our satisfaction what led up to Deputy Mead pulling his service firearm and firing multiple shots at Casey Goodson Jr. We may never have the answers. And that may be the bitterest pill of all to swallow here. That despite an investigation that now involves both the Columbus Police Department, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the Cincinnati Field Office of the FBI, that when all is said and done, the results that come back, may not satisfy those of us who are unclear and uncertain about why Casey Goodson died. So with that in mind, check out this conversation, which I promise is a good one, with Eric Delbert from L.E.P.D Firearms Range and Training there in Columbus, Ohio. Eric, thanks so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's great talking with you today.
Yeah, good talking with you as well, Cam.
I am sure that the Casey Goodson saga is a primary topic of conversation there at L.E.P.D Firearms Range and Training, as it is, I'm guessing, for both gun owners, for law enforcement, really across the state of Ohio right now.
It is. I mean, it's something that we kind of saw from the beginning that this is going to be a big story here, both locally and nationally. And since we're involved with firearms from the sale and training in law enforcement, we knew that it was going to be something that wasn't going to go away anytime soon.
And, it seems like you all are sort of in between these two worlds, both for law enforcement. I know you've got a lot of customers who are police officers, a lot of experience on staff from former law enforcement. At the same time, you've got a lot of gun owners who have never been in law enforcement who are going and they're getting their concealed carry training through you all. So I imagine that you're able to sort of look at this with maybe a little bit different perspective than a lot of folks.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we are uniquely positioned here at the store that when we teach concealed carry, a lot of times it's retired officers or even current officers teaching it. So we provide a little bit of a different perspective. Oftentimes, some of the guys teaching our classes talk about, to these new students how to act during a traffic stop once you have your CHL license. But then, on the weekend, these same officers are teaching in academy classes, teaching officers how to approach that car when they know the person has a CHL license. So, yes, we are very involved in from many facets of the whole discussion.
And there are so many unanswered questions right now, I think, which is, understandable. I mean, the investigation, well, to some degree, it's understandable that there are still some questions. We're not going to get immediate answers. But, you listen to the family side of the story and what they say happened versus what law enforcement says happened. Deputy Jason Meade says, Casey Goodson pointed a gun at him as he was driving down the street. And that's when Deputy Meade got in his vehicle and pursued Goodson a short distance to the family home. Goodson got out of his vehicle. Deputy Meade says he gave an order to drop a gun. Goodson did not do so, and that's when he opened fire. The family story is that Goodson had his gun on him because he was a concealed carry holder, but they say that he had a bag of Subway sandwiches in one hand. He had a face mask in his hand, and he had the keys to the home in his other hand. Was trying to get inside the door when he was shot 3 times in the back by Deputy Meade. The autopsy results have not come out yet. The coroner has said that Casey Goodson Jr. died from gunshot wounds to the torso, but they don't say where that was. We don't have any body camera footage. We don't have any dash cam footage. And as you well know, Eric, Columbus Police originally decided to investigate this internally, and then a couple of days later asked for the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation to take over. They declined. So now we've got the DOJ Civil Rights Division as well as the FBI Cincinnati field office who are assisting the Columbus Police in their investigation. And with all of that as the backdrop, I mean, we had protests in Columbus this weekend. Thankfully, they were peaceful. Although I was, I got to say, I was a little disturbed to see that there were protesters who showed up. Deputy Jason Meade actually pastors a church about 20 miles outside of Columbus. And there were actually protesters who showed up at that church this weekend, which I got to tell you, I mean, that to me just seemed to cross a line at this point. I'm glad that they were peaceful. They were asked to leave. Apparently they did so. But what are things like on the ground right now in Columbus, and how much attention is this story getting? And are people keeping an open mind, or are they already making their minds up before all the facts are known?
Unfortunately, Cam, we're seeing that people are already making their minds up. And like we see oftentimes in these tragedies, and it truly is a tragedy. I mean, anytime you have a loss of life, regardless as to the circumstances, it's a tragedy from all aspects. It's a tragedy for Deputy Meade's family, who are now faced with, people showing up at their church. And so every step along the way, everyone recognizes that it's an unfortunate tragedy on both parts. The thing that we get a little bit upset about is the misinformation. And you are right. There is conflicting statements out there, but the facts that remain is that there are no witnesses to this shooting. Mm-hmm. Columbus Police continue to say that. They are encouraging people, if they have witnessed it, to come out. But to this point, there are no witnesses. So statements from the family's attorney and some of the family that he wasn't pointing a gun or he simply had this in his hand or not are not factual at this point. And I guess the 911 call from the grandmother lends itself to that. I think she said something like, "I heard shots and I went and saw them," but there has been no witnesses to this. And as you said, the coroner's preliminary report simply shows 3 shots to the torso. Doesn't talk to front, back, or anything, but the dialogue out there is that he was shot 3 times, and heck, and even on the family's GoFundMe account, it goes a step further and says, police have admitted they shot the wrong man, and they shot him 3 times in the back, piercing his heart, which is totally fabricated. So, we try to get out there and say, look, it's a tragedy, but we, like everyone else, want to know the facts. And we have to withhold judgment until those facts are in. We were, I don't know if you caught the statements from Joyce Beatty and Sherrod Brown here in Ohio, the politicians.
No. At least I don't think I did.
They were reckless. I mean, Joyce Beatty, who I believe is a state senator, her statement immediately after was, like many in the community, I'm at a loss for words over the killing. And the circumstances are upsetting and extremely unsettling because too many black men in our community are dying at the victims of those sworn to protect them. And which is it's not based on facts. And so we see statements such as that and say, look, we're not saying, we just don't know the answers. I mean, it could come out later on that this isn't a scenario that was justified, but we can't as a society jump to these conclusions and start putting this stuff out there and trying them before it even has the investigation completed.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, look, as a Second Amendment supporter, as a concealed carry holder, obviously there are troubling questions here. But as you say, there are questions at this point. We don't have answers. One of the things that is troubling is that we might not ever get answers that truly satisfy us. Because as you say, there were no eyewitnesses that we know of. The family called 911, moments after the shooting happened. There was another neighbor who said that he heard Deputy Meade a yell. He said it sounded like an argument. This would be Deputy Meade. He says, this is when he told Casey Goodson to drop the gun, but he didn't see the shots fired. So that's going to be, I think that's one thing that is maybe aiding those folks who are jumping to conclusions. The absence of facts. All of a sudden now we want to plug in supposition where we don't have, factual information. Not saying it's the right thing to do. It may very well be human nature. But I mean, I got to tell you, Eric, one of the things that, really has just struck me with this case is that, you listen to Casey Goodson's family and friends, and they describe a young man who was very caring. They say this would have been completely out of character for him to, point a gun at. And at this point, these officers were in plainclothes. We now know this. So these were not uniformed officers. We don't know specifically what vehicles they were driving, but they say this would have been completely out of character for Casey Goodson. And then you listen to Deputy Meade's friends and those who are pastored by him in that church, and they say, look, this is a guy who cares. He's a veteran. He's a 17-year law enforcement veteran as well as a U.S. Marine. He is a caring, concerned individual. It seems completely out of character for him to have, mistaken a Subway sandwich bag for a gun and then open fire. And I believe both of those groups of people. I see no reason to disbelieve those who say that Casey Goodson was a kind, caring young man, and I see no reason to disbelieve those folks who say that Deputy Meade is a conscientious member of law enforcement. And so I'm stuck. Like everybody else, I'm waiting for facts to emerge because all I know right now is, as you say, this was an absolute tragedy. Right.
And and by all accounts, Mr. Goodson, he had a valid Ohio CHL license. And, the thing that I worry about, and I don't want to add to, the potential stories out there, but we're seeing in law enforcement, because I'm still active in law enforcement, and what we're seeing on the street sometimes, and I'm not saying that it occurred here, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is part of it, is that there is almost an active defiance to law enforcement right now. A trend to argue on the street, to challenge from simple traffic stops to any time a law enforcement gives you a lawful order. And I hope that wasn't the case here. I hope it wasn't the case where Mr. Goodson was saying, hey, I have a valid CCW, but was not complying. And that that is all is going to be seen as the facts come out. But it's something that we're seeing on the street more and more that's troubling them, and that it's not we need the leaders to stand up and say, look, if you're doing something wrong, or if you're approached by law enforcement, even if you have a valid CHL license, you need to comply. That's not the time. And we deal with it in law enforcement in an off-duty capacity. If you're off-duty and you stumble upon a crime and it causes you to have your firearm out, you know that when uniformed officers arrive on the scene, they don't know you from the bad guy. And so you have to comply. And we teach that in our class over and over again, that you have a valid license now to carry a firearm concealed, but you still must be aware of the fact that if you're told to drop the gun and with the circumstances, that you got to still comply. And again, I don't know if that was the case here, but I'm just saying the trend that we're seeing on the street is troublesome, and I guess we'll have to wait to see how the facts play out.
We absolutely will. And to that end, I mean, let me again, since we're now, and I want to make clear to the audience, we're now engaging entirely in supposition here. We're now not dealing with the facts, but you talk about what law enforcement has been going through. And I think even before the George Floyd death and the protests that we've seen, the civil unrest. I mean, I think even going back to the first COVID closures in March, law enforcement's been dealing with a difficult job. Is it possible, Eric, that law enforcement individuals in law enforcement are feeling beleaguered? They're feeling a little, no pun intended, under the gun. That maybe they might be a little jumpy when they see somebody drive by. How stressed out are law enforcement officers right now?
Well, law enforcement is extremely stressed out. I mean, they are feeling like there's no support, and there really hasn't been support by and large. But it's almost, I think, taken the opposite effect. I think we're seeing officers on the street being so conservative and so second-guessing at times that it's almost to a detriment. There was a video that came out 2 weeks ago right here in Columbus. It was a state highway patrol officer who stopped the car for speeding. Valid stop along a freeway. The gentleman had a firearm exposed on his hip. So, in Ohio, you can open carry. If you have a valid CHL license, you can carry that concealed or in your hip in your car. But if you don't have a license, then you can't carry that firearm on your hip in the vehicle. And during the course of the stop, the trooper sees that firearm, tells him that, hey, just keep your hand off the gun and, we'll be all right here. I stopped you for speeding. Well, it escalates, and the trooper has to call for backup, and so it becomes a 2 to 3 minute interaction on the side of the road where this gentleman multiple times puts his hand on his firearm in the presence of both officers. Both officers have their firearms out at this point, and the gentleman at one point says, I'm done, I'm just driving away. And, a year and a half ago that the protocol would have been, you need to stop that individual who, and during this encounter, the individual threatened to shoot the officers. And this encounter, the gentleman shut his door and drove away, and a short time later, they called off the chase. So it's actually, I think, gone the other way, where everyone is so conservative on what they're doing. It's almost become a hindrance. I think, the worry on the street is that you're not going to get the backing in public, in the public eye, or sometimes from your even own department, and so officers are taking a step back. That's why we're seeing the spike in crime everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, that much is absolutely certain. Listen, we've only got a couple minutes left, but I want to ask you: has the Casey Goodson story, has that had an impact on the number of folks who are, calling your facility asking for concealed carry training? Are you seeing more? Are you seeing less? Has it made a difference at all?
No, I mean, specifically on this, no. I mean, we've seen the impact this year, starting with COVID and then going into the social unrest and then going right into the election. Our training, our sales, every aspect of the business is just exponentially higher than before. The good thing is that when people are coming in to buy firearms and who've never touched a firearm, they're then signing up for classes. So we're happy to see that. I mean, we're a training facility. We want people, to know how to use the firearm properly and to be properly trained with it. And we are seeing that, which is encouraging, for all of us going forward.
Absolutely. Any relief on the ammo situation that you know of in the near future?
Nothing good. I will tell you, we just took in about 120,000 rounds of 9mm. The price that we paid for it will make you sick. But we chose, we have a range here, we have training, so we chose to have it at a ridiculous price rather than not have it at all. So, no, there's nothing on the horizon that I can see.
Now, that is unfortunate. Hopefully there are some answers on the horizon in the Casey Goodson case. I hope that justice is done one way or the other, but again, we need answers for both families involved and for all of those who are mourning the death of Casey Goodson and, again, this tragic situation. Eric Delbert with L.E.P.D. Firearms Range and Training there in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for your time today, sir. It's so good talking with you, and hope we get a chance to do this again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Kim, and if we can be of any assistance, just let us know, and we'll keep you updated what we hear on the ground.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Eric. I appreciate Eric joining us on the program. We are going to obviously continue to follow any new developments in the investigation into Casey Goodson's death. We'll bring them to you both here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company as well as at BearingArms.com. Right now, let's turn our attention to today's good deed of the day, our armed citizen story, and our recidivist report. We will start there, actually, with a story out of Illinois where a second man has been arrested for allegedly shooting at sheriff's deputies in Champaign County. 20-year-old Juwan Brown cooperated with U.S. Marshals who found him at the home of a friend in Urbana, Illinois on Monday afternoon. They had an arrest warrant after he was charged with reckless discharge of a firearm as well as unlawful possession of a weapon by a felon at the ripe old age of 20. So, as it turns out, Juwan Brown, known to law enforcement because of his alleged involvement in at least 3 other weapons cases since August of last year. Since August of 2019. At least 3 other cases. Champaign County Sheriff's Lieutenant Kurt Apperson said Brown was the driver of a car that 2 deputies tried to stop for a traffic violation back on December the 3rd. Before they could activate their lights, several shots were fired in their direction, none of which hit either deputy or their squad car. They pursued the vehicle for a few miles. It crashed near an intersection. The occupants got out and ran. They were able to quickly apprehend 27-year-old Lawrence Lewis III from Champaign, Illinois. He was charged on December the 4th with attempted murder, aggravated discharge of a firearm, as well as being an armed habitual criminal. Yeah. And then Juwan Brown developed as a suspect by police the day of the shooting. He had a warrant issued for his arrest. Detectives spoke with Brown on Monday of this week. He admitted being in the car that fled from deputies, gave no explanation as to why. As for those previous incidents that Juwan Brown was involved in, according to the News Gazette, court records show that Brown is currently on probation in 2 separate cases. He has a 3rd pending related to a shooting in downtown Champaign on August the 8th of this year. It was August of 2019. He pleaded guilty to have a handgun in January of 2019. He was sentenced to 30 months probation. And then he was arrested again in November of 2019 for aggravated discharge of a firearm. Arrested about 3 weeks after that, so that would be December of 2019, for aggravated battery to a police officer as well as unlawful use of weapons. He pleaded guilty in June of this year to the aggravated battery to a police officer charge. In exchange, he received 30 months of probation. The other charges were dismissed. So he's actually received probation twice now over the past year for separate offenses. If convicted of these most recent charges, he does face a mandatory prison term. But again, one has to wonder why just now is the system getting serious with Juwan Brown, given the repeated run-ins with the law just over the past, 12 to 18 months. Our armed citizen story of the day from Baltimore County, Maryland, not Baltimore City, mind you. But Baltimore County. I got to tell you, it's rare enough to have an armed citizen outside of the home in the state of Maryland because of the restrictive concealed carry laws that are on the books in the state. But the Baltimore County Police responded to a shooting at a parking lot in a Walmart just a few days ago involving an individual who was acting in self-defense. Baltimore County Police spokeswoman Officer Jennifer Peach said it was about 5:30 Sunday afternoon. Officers called into a Walmart in the Rossville, Maryland area. When police arrived, they said they found Kamar Jamar Burney suffering from a gunshot wound to the upper body. Police said that Burney was transported with life-threatening injuries to Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center, where he later died. He had apparently arranged a meetup in a parking lot with a man This was like an online sales app. So they met. Bernie was supposed to be selling a pair of shoes. During the transaction, according to police, Bernie attempted to rob the seller. That seller then pulled a handgun, shot Bernie once, called 911, remained at the scene. Police said in a news release, investigators interviewed and released the seller, who is cooperating with the police investigation. Once detectives from the Baltimore County Police Homicide Unit have concluded their investigation, the case will be reviewed by the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office. The Baltimore Sun doesn't say whether or not that individual who's acting in self-defense was licensed to carry a handgun. I'm very curious to see whether that was the case and whether that will impact the charges, given that this individual appears to have been acting in self-defense. Maryland is one of the few may-issue states remaining in this country where your right to keep and bear arms is not enough for you to actually bear arms. The state of Maryland requires that you demonstrate some sort of justifiable need to carry a firearm in self-defense, and it's my right, doesn't apply. I want to be able to protect myself. I live in a bad neighborhood. That's not justifiable need. You need to be able to present some sort of specific ongoing threat against your life or some sort of special set of circumstances that places you above the average citizen in order to exercise the right of the people to bear arms. Yeah, I've got my issues with Maryland's carry laws. And again, I'm very curious to know whether or not this individual who appears to have acted in self-defense was a concealed carry holder, or whether that individual chose to disregard the law because they wanted to act in self-defense. They had no other way to do so. So we'll definitely keep our eyes on this story. We'll bring any more details as they become available. Finally today, our good deed of the day from Orlando, Florida, where a TSA officer in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to help a traveler there at the Orlando International Airport. Officer Kenneth Ordanana was having a coffee break. It was around 5:30 in the morning. Member of the airport's cleaning crew then runs over and tells the TSA official, "Hey, listen, we need some help. There's somebody who is not breathing." So Officer Ordanana said, "My initial reaction was shock." He said, "Is this really happening?" He said, 100 thoughts raced through my mind, not knowing what to expect. So he runs to the bathroom where this unresponsive traveler was. He says, "I'm ready to dial 911. I had my phone already in my hand." He got in there, realized, okay, yeah, this guy's not breathing, didn't have a pulse. So he immediately began CPR on the phone with 911 while he's performing CPR. Soon thereafter, a Delta employee who was a certified first responder joined Ordanana in performing CPR on the individual. He says he was happy to have the extra help since the CPR certification was not up to date and the Delta employee's was. He said, "Life is precious." He said, "Although I do not know this man, never met this man before, I had tremendous compassion and empathy for him. The only thing on my mind was I wanted to get him through this and for him to live." After about 10 minutes, first responders arrived. The man had a pulse, was breathing on his own when medics took him to a hospital. Orlando Deputy Federal Security Director Greg Hawko says the man would not have made it the 10 minutes it took for additional help to arrive without Ordanana's actions. We're proud that he's a member of Team NCO. His quick thinking and care of others, especially during the current environment of distancing, saved a man's life. So there you go. In the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. TSA Officer Kenneth Ordanana there in Orlando, Florida. We thank you for your very good deed. Now, that is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program. As always, lots of ways to find us, by the way. YouTube, Town Hall Media, just look there. We're on Rumble now as well. You can subscribe to Rumble, Bearing Arms Cam & Company. You can find us. Also on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, probably some others too. I just can't think of them right now, but that's a lot. So make sure you spread the word. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss a program. There is I'd say about a 20% chance that we will not have a show on Wednesday. We've got some winter weather coming in and it might make travel hazardous. But as of right now, the plan is we will have a show on Wednesday. Just don't freak out. If I'm not here, we'll be back Thursday if that happens. But right now, plans are live, well, not live shows, but news shows each and every day this week. Live to tape. Try not to do the editing thing. Until we talk again, be well. See, I would edit that part out, but we try to do it live to tape. Until we talk again, be well, be safe, be free. We'll see you soon with more Bearing Arms Cam and Company.